Discovery Institute can continue to facilitate their work and others to the next level. So at this point, I'll just open it up for questions.
I know you find this hard to believe that I have a question, Alan. My question is not very technical, but for each of you, as you look at the CDI process, other than saying CDI would have $600 million and give out $50 million a year, what would you do, what would you recommendations would you make to the CDI board or the CDI, change in the CDI process in order to facilitate the way you guys have come together or the way that other researchers could come together to enhance the opportunities out there for curing childhood disease?
It's on. Should be on.
Well, one of the things, as you've pointed out, or I asked in our session, how did Tom and I get together? And it was fortuitous that we were able to, through a common colleague, get together on a project like this. Maybe one of the things would be to perhaps do this type of presentation on the different campuses to an audience of faculty as well, so people could see the example of cross-disciplinary teams making progress on this type of thing, and get the idea to work together in similar ways. So I think we were fortuitous it worked out this way. If it could happen more often, it would just be better.
Well, I was just not say something that I would change, but emphasize something that I think is being done right, and that is a lot of the traditional funding sources, especially the NIH, are typically risk averse. They want projects that are really going to work and yield results with great certainty. And so that really discourages people with crazy ideas or very innovative ideas. And the NIH is trying to remedy that with certain innovative programs, but it's still only a fraction of their budget. And so I think funding mechanisms like the CDI are absolutely critical to allow investigators to try ideas that are much riskier, but can yield potentially great results.
Hi, Dave Punick-Werb. So I'm honored to be one of the investigators on the CDI, but I wanted to pick up on that theme because I think there's an evolving methodology here that's interesting to point out. The scientific method often is thought of as if it were an Olympic race of the relay mile, where each step along the way is as if it's linearly processed, hypothesis and data, and maybe in some ideal world it ran like that, but it's not really a well-orchestrated baton around a loop, even if we think of it iterating. I think it's more analogous to the Chicago Board of Trade. There's this chaos there, but there is an overlying rules, and at the end of the day, productivity has been performed, even though it might be hard to understand the rules if you're just looking at the chaos down in the pit. But there is a process to it, and I think what we call these in science is often these processes of investigators getting together and trying wild ideas, discovery grants, or even pilot projects where they are high risk, but they bring around a lot of innovation and sometimes the quantum leaps, but they have to be in the context of sort of well-reasoned but high-risk processes. And some really important processes, and I think that's an area where there are, as pointed out, processes to get well-reasoned grants and low-risk next steps. And that's an important part of science too. But I think what's going on and championed already, but I would encourage is really important, is these discovery grants and pilot projects and high-risk projects with 3-page applications, et cetera, because like the Board of Trade, I think some really productive processes can come out of that chaos at the end, and some of these examples are wonderful examples of what's happening at CDI, and I think that's an area that we could really encourage more. So sorry for the editorial comment, but it's really
no, and I'll actually echo that. I mean, we said it in some of the talks. I mean, other than having to work with Phil, this would have never have happened This would have never have happened without the CDI. There's no, I mean, the NIH or Cystic Fibrosis Foundation or Marchand Acts, the various places that fund me routinely, you know, this kind of wacky idea, I want to take a look at algae and create a human disease out of it, give me some money to support this, that would have never have happened. They looked at me, you know, kind of goofy, which probably reasonable, but in this instance, it made none of it. But now we actually have had the opportunity to get together, show that this is feasible, show that we'll produce a preliminary data, and what may be the Chicago trade has become now, I think, a project that has a very clear and well-defined direction.
Perhaps a question on a similar theme as versus the process versus what you're studying, and that is your research and the two old guys in particular, because you love it. I can tell by the way you react to that every time.
No, because I'm thinking what's going to happen tomorrow at work.
By the way, that wasn't my question. And the reason I'm picking on you too is because you made a big deal, or somebody made a big deal about the fact that there's 4 interdisciplinary going together. So in this model, say, in each one of these steps, how important is it that you could see each other physically day to day versus by Skype or by internet or email or a quarterly retreat at a resort?
Well, the CDI doesn't fund that well. So we do meet. I mean, because, you know, Phil is located over here on this campus. I'm over in Children's primarily. Susan is over in another part of the medical campus, as is Steve. But, you know, we meet as well as our other, you know, the people working with us, other collaborators, and we meet on a very regular basis at a coffee shop in the Farrell Learning Center. Every Tuesday or every other Tuesday morning. If you want to join us, feel free. And we just kind of sit down, we talk about what we're doing, where we're going, and sort of what the next steps are. Even in between times, I know Phil will see Susan, or I'll see Susan, or I'll see Steve, and we will talk about the project and where things are going, and where some of these interesting sort of side projects are, trying to help us understand the biology, trying to help us understand the models that we're creating. But it's absolutely critical. I mean, if the only time I saw Phil is every year when I had to write the competitive or the non-competitive renewal for the project, we wouldn't get anywhere. But the opportunity to kind of sit down and see what he's doing and what his colleagues are doing is absolutely valuable, because it helps us really crystallize in our mind what the next step is.
I want to emphasize something that Tom didn't touch on, but I think is really important, and it's really the most important funding the CDI gave us at all was the funding to support the young people who worked on the project. The first guy we hired, Brian Lewis, we told him when he's going to have a really interesting job because he's got 4 bosses. And Brian was the engine that drove the whole project. And he had 4 bosses. He worked for Susan, worked for Vinny, and he interacted with all of us. And he was actually the glue that kept us all together. You know, we went to the meetings at the coffee shop and worked on it, but we spent, you know, 5%, 10% of my time, you know, small percent of his time. But Brian and then Shauna and Phil Kemp, who, you know, Brian's now an MD PhD at Case Western. Philip is now going to medical school at WashU. Shauna is going to go to grad school. Those people, seeing them face to face and having them interact with each of us was extremely important. And I think it was important for their careers going forward, as well as for the success of the project. So I think that would be hard to do, you know, collaborating at a distance. It'd be difficult to replicate that. So I think it's, even though, you know, we are two, as I was saying, old guys over the hill about to retire, I think the you know, the bulk of the progress was done by, you know, really, you know, young people starting out of the gate and having face-to-face contact was critical.
One of the other reasons why young people are key is they don't know enough to not go down a certain pathway. Us old guys often know too much and are often sort of risk averse.